two things that you need to download: bit.ly/fresno-5-code or -slides. Okay. So take a note on that. Let's get started. So what is the current landscape if we think about like what are the tech companies doing? What are they investing on? There's a lot of stuff going on the web right now. But if we take a closer look to those big companies, we're gonna see some kind of pattern. If we take a look at Twitter, they made this Twitter Bootstrap project, which is now the most popular project on GitHub. Everybody loves it. You just put their CSS and things are now pretty on your page and you don't need to carry about. And what is Bootstrap about? Components. Okay, so you go to Bootstrap and they have like a bunch of components that you can just come here and, okay, I want this header, I want this pagination, here's the markup. I just go ahead, copy and paste that, put it on my application, and it's gonna work. If I want an alert or progress bar or Jumbotron or like all those things. I also have some JavaScript components like tabs. I don't need to like reinvent a tab and then drop down and then collapse and all that. But what happens with Twitter Bootstrap? Have you guys used Twitter Bootstrap before?
Yeah.
It's awesome, right? You include the CSS, you follow their CSS namings, CSS class namings, and then things look pretty.
But isn't it kind of like what you said with jQuery? People are learning Bootstrap and not really learning the underlying technology.
Exactly, yeah, this happens. But and another problem is that like we have all those classes here and Bootstrap is extremely he's extremely take care of your code, right? So if you have any class called close, Bootstrap will just put their CSS like the way they think it should be. If you have class btn, Bootstrap has this definition. So like you need to override the CSS from Bootstrap. So, and you can get a lot of conflicts, and especially naming conflicts with Bootstrap because...
Yeah, you get code collisions, right?
Exactly,
Your code, their code, same class name in each, whoops.
And same thing, like you're gonna download this huge CSS file and this huge JavaScript file. And you may be using just the button, but then you have like carousel, and there's a lot of logic behind each of those components, right? But you're getting this whole thing, you're putting on your page for the sake of being more productive and start doing your code, but then you're loading all this junk that you're not using or it's conflicting with something else. But still, Bootstrap is extremely awesome, but you have those problems.
I think that's an interesting commentary about humanity, that we'll take easy and pretty over quality, you know. And
yeah, that's true. If we look at Facebook, they are worried about the same thing. So they created React as a way to create components faster in a standardized way, in a way that they think that's how you should create components. So this is a extremely popular project nowadays, and it's just an opinion on how you should create components. If you take a look at Yahoo, so they have this, they used to have the YY project. Have you guys heard about this one, YY? Lots of components. If you go to YY, they have like tons of stuff, pretty nice project. You get like, let me get to this example. Tutorials maybe? Yeah.
YUI is deprecated, they're closing the doors though.
Exactly, yeah. So you have all those components that you can create cool stuff. They have all those utilities, you have graphics, you have tons of stuff, and that's how YUI is, like a library for UI components. you want to build graphics, here's something that you can build graphics easily. If you want to build whatever, CSS grids, here it is. You want to build widgets, here's how you should build widgets. There's tons of stuff, like image loader, paginator. You want all that, so you go and you grab YY. So, but YY is now deprecated. They're not gonna continue the project. But another project that started from the YY team, it's pure CSS, like a year and a half or 2 years ago. So pure CSS was a different approach to, like, based on what Bootstrap had, they were like, yeah, we need something like this. We need just the CSS that we import, and then we have the same styling. But then you just include those classes, and then you have this tables. You have like a pretty cool menu, grids. So all those companies, they are trying to reuse stuff. They don't want to build a new menu all the time. They don't want to build a new table all the time. So that's why they create those projects.
It makes sense internally, right? They're trying to just create reusable code.
Exactly.
Componentization, making things modular.
Exactly.
Do not repeat yourself. That's just good programming practice,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then why do they care to share it with the world? Like, here's our code for how we make Yahoo look, or
Mm-hmm. Why they share that?
Notoriety or what?
So that's the perfect question. Why they share this code? Why is everything open source? That's pretty simple. They want free labor. You put your code on GitHub, people start using it, and they're like, oh, this could be improved. So they go and improve that. So in the end, like putting your code out there, like some people think, oh, I'm exposing all my secrets and how I make things, and this is so, like, I can't do that. That's like 95% of the whole entire population of the world. They don't want to share their secrets. And that's so wrong. Like, if you think about all the famous chefs, they all show their recipes on YouTube. They all do this kinds of stuff. And
Yeah,
that's
open source is better because it'll the quality. But you're right.
Yeah.
The reason is people will contribute. People
Exactly.
Make it better
Yeah.
versus take it.
Yeah.
And there are situations
Mhm.
where we've seen that, but they're not
Yeah.
as proliferate
Mhm.
as what we got.
Exactly. So in most of the ways, having your project open source, it's a good thing because you can attract external contributors. Like Bootstrap would never be that good if it was just an internal project. I'm like 100% positive about that.
That's a great answer. It's the best answer I've ever heard.
And like other companies, Adobe. So Adobe, they have this top quote. Let's check it out. So they have this project, and
There is so much stuff. I've never even heard of top code.
yeah. So like you want this large button, you want this call to action, you want a text input to behave in this certain way, you want a customized text area. So you can just go ahead and they have some benchmarks that shows why like they're fast and all that. So again, same thing, they're trying to solve the same problem. We want components, we want to reuse each piece of code.
Is it possible to mix and match, take something from top code, something from Bootstrap?
Perfect. If you try to do that, let's try it with pure CSS. So pure is nice because they put this pure prefix on your classes. So you could just go ahead and get the whole CSS from pure and put it in your page, go to Bootstrap, get their CSS. But what if Bootstrap has this pure table? What if they share the same classes, you know? You never know. You are not like 100% sure. So how those things interact between each other, that's the other problem.
Well, in the size, at that point, your size of your page
Yeah.
load is huge.
Mhm.
You have 2 huge libraries.
Mm-hmm. And not only about CSS. If you try to get an AngularJS and you put some React component on the same page, there are like lots of chances that this is not going to work. So it's not only about performance, it's about reusing stuff and composing them together on some application.
Well, I guess I was leading up to a question I had earlier as you guys were discussing. in light of this deprecated company. So now I've built a portion, if not my whole website, based on that company's stuff. And I'll tell you, the one thing being in aerospace for 25 years was standardization. The struggle against standardization. That the government could look at this rocket plan and know that Boeing does it the same way that Lockheed does it. And we struggled so much investment. And this is what I'm seeing with our conversation here and with all these options.
Yeah, but it's free. So you don't have the right to complain, you know? Like you went to GitHub, you saw their code, oh, it's nice, it's free, and I can just download and use it. Why they said, we are not gonna continue maintaining this. If the community wants to do that, that's good. And that's what happened with me in the company I work for. So LifeRay, we have been, this is the company I work for, and we have been using YY for years, for like 4 or 5 years. And we created this project, which I was maintaining in the past, called LIY, which is like just components. I was showing to Rio the other day. So like, if you want to build like stuff like this, so you have all the components like char counter, like you have all those things. And we are using YY. And suddenly they announced it, okay, we're not gonna maintain this anymore. And we were like freaking out. It's like, wait, what? You're not gonna maintain this? But what can you do, you know? It's just like, I can just continue using this because it works, or I can change to a different solution, or I can try to maintain by myself. There are many options on the table, but.
Or you can rewrite it all from the ground up in SAS.
Yeah.
Or learn the new framework that will come out, just came out.
Exactly.
But that separation of concerns, because very good point Paul made about when you build your site. I mean, right now, city's facing a situation that we have an old CMS, and we want to upgrade. Well, that data is somewhat locked into their format. So if we move to something else, we have to reformat that data. It's a huge jump.
Yeah.
So that separation of concerns seems like it's leading into the conversation of web components,
Exactly.
right?
Thus, Rio, in aerospace, the dinosaurs like Boeing and all them are playing catch up now with SpaceX and them, because they still have programs and mainframes and everything that run from the 50s.
Yeah.
And the cost to reprogram, recode everything to a new system is too not
Yeah.
financially an option right now. It's considered enough of a concern that they're going to invest money to do all that. So, it's a big, huge headache.
Yeah. So you have all those options, and like some of those options are made by companies, other options are made by individual developers. But you have a lot of stuff, and they don't work with each other very well. You are loading more stuff than you could be, but all those projects, they all comes down to the same thing. We all want to standardize components on our page. I don't want to rewrite this component. If I have like 50 pages, I don't want to rewrite this all the time. I want to have the same feeling. And this is like related to user experience as well. I want the user to feel like the same way, doesn't matter the page that he's on. So I want the same behavior, I want the same components. I don't want this menu box to look this way on this page and completely different on another page because I can't understand what's happening. And the way we build components nowadays, it's just impossible to get that. There's no solution that encapsulates everything, that doesn't crash other stuff, that you can just reuse that block and put it in your page. So that's what web components is about. But how do we create a component nowadays? So first, you pick a library or a framework. So you're not sure about what is the best option. So you have Angular, you have React, you have Polymer, there are many options, and you're like, okay, what's the best? But I'm not gonna write this from scratch. So you go to jQuery, you download their code, because there's a lot of people using jQuery and all that. So you go do that, or Angular, or Ember. And you pick one, and then you spend hours learning that. So you keep like, okay, how can I do like this little thing with this framework, and then you evolve from that, and evolve from that, and evolve from that.
I love the titles of the book. Go back.
Yeah.
The titles of the book on that previous slide.
And then you start writing your code and build that component. And then you like,
Wow.
this. So that's how we recreate something nowadays, right? So we pick this library, doesn't matter what's the option. We spend hours learning that, and then we spend hours building our codes, and then we put out there. And how someone else can reuse that code. So if you're trying to build a carousel, you could just go to Google, and then you can search for carousel plugin. And then you're gonna see like, okay, like Bootstrap, jQuery, what is the framework that you wanna build that? So you need to find some solution that is made with the same framework as you were. So let's say I chose jQuery, and then I'll search for the results. And if I find something like this, oh, that's perfect, like the 60 best jQuery carousel sliders. So that's perfect, so I'm gonna get this one. They already made the decision for me. So you get that, you try to find a pretty one, something that is similar to what you're trying to do. And then you copy and paste their code. You don't have any idea what's going on over here. You just, okay, this doesn't make any sense, but looks pretty, looks similar to what I want, so you copy and paste their code. And then you hope it works. And if it works, fine. And if it doesn't, okay, you can't just maintain that. And if someone comes to you and say, hey, we need to add this new feature to this component, you don't have any idea how to do that, because it's just impossible. Like, you may not know that framework, or you may find a really nice component made on jQuery, but it doesn't work with some other component, or doesn't work with my technology stack that I have nowadays. And that's the promise for web components. The promise of web components is trying to solve that. It's trying to make something on a standardized way. And how are things standardized on the web? With W3C, they build those specs, and then the browser vendors implement those specs, and then developers, we can use that. So what are web components? So this is just a term, an umbrella term, like HTML5 is, for a collection of emerging standards. So you have custom elements, HTML templates, shadow DOM, and HTML imports. So my idea today, for this morning, is show each one of them, and then we're gonna have some exercises, and we're gonna see custom elements. We're gonna do an exercise with custom elements. We're gonna see HTML templates. So then we're gonna build something with custom elements and HTML templates. Then shadow DOM, which is gonna use custom elements, HTML templates, and shadow DOM. And finally, HTML imports, which you're gonna have to use everything. But just as a background, how web components started. So this guy, Dmitry Glaskov, works at Google. On 2010, they were discussing some other stuff. This is the web apps mailing list, the W3C mailing list. And he proposed this idea of standardizing, templating, shadow DOM, binding, some other stuff. And that was just some idea that he threw on December 2010. a year later, a spec was formed and people started to discuss and evolve on that spec. This whole process takes a lot of time. Standardizing something on the web takes a lot of time. I don't know if you guys remember, but when HTML5 came out, everybody was saying, hey, this is gonna be ready in 2020. And everybody's like, whoa, this is impossible. But what happens in the end is that those companies, they start to see the spec, they feel like if they agree on that, they're gonna start implementing on their browsers. Because they want to give that, those functionalities to the developers. And then the web starts evolving. So this is what happened with CSS3, for example. They put out this spec and everybody was like, oh, I can do border radius now? That's awesome. I can do box shadow? That's awesome. So they were like, we need to give this to developers. So Google started to implement their own stuff. And then the other like Mozilla, they started to implement that. But then they had disagreements, and now that's why we have those vendor prefixes. And with web components, it's a little bit different, and I'll tell a little bit more about it later on. And then on 2013, on the Google I/O, they first showed off like, hey, this is web components. This is what we're trying to solve with those 4 specs. And after this talk, everybody was like, whoa. And you can see that because of their subtitle, like a tectonic shift for web development. They were like, whoa, this is big, and we need to take a look into that. So let's jump into the first one, custom elements.
Let's actually pause, drop right there. So that's a good chunk.